All right, Event Trader here. We are getting into the final hour of trade this week. Markets are set to close near the session highs. I don't know if anybody saw my early morning comment, but just to recap here, basically noted the heavy feel to the market and looking for that sell-off. But again, I said overall I'm expecting a relatively quiet August Friday trading session. I do think we see shorts attempt to push us lower, but look for buy the dip to come back and level us flat, and that's basically exactly what we did. Just your typical Friday action right here. So played out well. I was looking at a bounce, got caught up talking about AMD with Scott, unfortunately, so we missed it, but hopefully that 2900 level, some people were able to get in and play that bounce activity and watch us rally back 31 points here. Pretty strong close as well at the moment. So we still got 50 minutes of trading left. We'll keep an eye on this, see if anything comes about. But nice bounce back by the bulls off that 2900 level. Overall, a pretty nice bounce back by the bulls in the back half of the week here. So really recovered the majority of the losses, and I think we're going to end up the week up now, it would certainly appear, right at the 50-day moving average in the S&P. That's sitting there at 29.39, so just a little bit below it. For the NASDAQ, we're sitting there just right on it, really. It's 76 or 7707 is the 50 SMA, and we're at 76.85, so just a little bit below. And then for the diamonds, we've seen that get back to that 26,300 area here, and it's basically sitting right on just above its 100-day, which sits at 26,292. So taking a look at next week, I did just post a comment at 15:06. I just wanted to point out some of the key themes, and we'll go through, take a little closer look at the U.S. and international macro, as well as some corporate and conferences, and then, as per usual, finish it up with a quick look at some of the earnings that lie ahead. For the key themes for next week, it is a little bit of a slower week for us, so I think everybody will appreciate the breather, but China is definitely going to be in focus. We have on Wednesday night a slew of Chinese economic data from July. We've already, of course, gotten the inflation and trade balance numbers, but we'll also get the retail sales and industrial production reports on Wednesday night. That'll certainly be closely followed by the markets. In addition, there's going to be a number of earnings from China. We've got Tencent's going to be out, TME, which is, of course, Tencent Music Entertainment. That's Monday. We've got JD, Huya, and YY on Tuesday, so I'm sure Scalp will be paying attention to that YY out there. Tencent and Luckin Coffee, LK. It's that Chinese coffee IPO that I've been talking about. It's really making a nice move here. We'll take a little bit of a close look in a second. And then Thursday we got BABA and Canadian Solar, CSIQ. So a full week of Chinese data on both the corporate and country side. So we'll definitely be of interest to see what kind of impact these trade wars are having on them. Next up, we've got our U.S. economic data in focus here. It is a relatively slow week. We got the CPI out on Tuesday. That'll certainly be of note, but really it's Thursday morning that we're going to see the belly of activity going on here. Empire and Philly Fed are both out. They're always forward-looking surveys, so be keen to see what they have to say. Retail sales, industrial production, Q2 productivity, and unit labor costs are all crossing the wires that morning. So Tuesday morning is going to be the big morning on the macro front for the U.S. here. And then finally, earnings. The majority of names have already passed, but there are some key ones, particularly in the retail side. Some nice tech names out there, and a couple marijuana plays too. And we'll break into each one of those here in a little bit. But taking, again, just going back to each of the segments now, the U.S. macro, as mentioned, Thursday is really the big day here for us. But also, in addition, Monday we got a July Treasury budget, but WASDE report too. Certainly want to keep an eye out on that. CPI is out on Tuesday. That's also expected to be a date of a possible ruling on the EU Airbus tariff case that the Trump administration is listening to. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Wednesday, some inflation numbers with the import-export prices. Thursday, as mentioned, a big round of data with retail sales, Empire, Philly Fed, Q2 productivity and unit labor costs, July industrial production, June business inventories, and of course NatGas. And then later on that night we'll also get net long-term tick flows. Then Friday we got the starts and permit numbers, as well as the preliminary look at the University of Michigan sentiment key consumer read there. On the international front, Monday just heads up, Japan's closed. We're still waiting for the China New Yuan loans. We might get that over the weekend, but we will get Japan PPI that on Monday night. Tuesday, Germany will be clicking in with its CPI and whole production price index as well too. We also get a UK jobs report, and then a German and Eurozone zoo survey looking at the economic environment there in this forward-looking outlook. And we'll also get some Japan machinery orders that night. And then Tuesday night is, of course, when we get China and their industrial production, unemployment rate, and fixed asset investment numbers. Wednesday, we get Germany's Q2 GDP preliminary look. That should certainly be of interest, as well as UK inflation report. We get Eurozone's Q2 GDP numbers that day too, as well as industrial production and employment change. And then later on that night, Australia's got their inflation expectations and jobs report, and then a revision to the Japan industrial production number. Thursday, France and Italy are closed. UK's got the retail sales number, and Canada will be posting its ADP report. And then finally, Friday, we got the Eurozone trade balance. Taking a look at corporate and conferences here, relatively quiet. A few of note: Cowen and Company have infrastructure conference kicking off Monday. Wells Fargo has a technical services conference kicking off that same day. Susquehanna Energy, BWS Financial, Growth, Goldman Sachs Power and Utilities, Wedbush Healthcare, JP Morgan Auto are all out on Tuesday. And then Wednesday we got Needham Industrials conference starting up, Bank of America AI conference, and Buckingham Financial Services, as well as the Needham FinTech. And then Thursday, Brinker EATE will have its analyst meeting. This will be 2 days after they report earnings, so not sure how much of a impact that's going to have. So I'm going to break in a few of these earnings here. I don't think Scott's going to be joining me today. He's earned a well-deserved break on the beach, so just going to push ahead here. Alright, so let's take a look at some of these names that we got popping out. Bloom Energy, BE. This is a name I know some people in feedback have been looking for. This thing's just been bleeding lower, and it kind of falls into that price action that Scott and I were talking about, where I just couldn't find a bidder. I mean, every time I would try to bounce, as you could see in February, and you could see in May, it would just bounce and drift lower, and the last one would have come in early July, and now we're hitting session lows. We'll be curious to see what kind of results we get in, but I mean, for me, there's no need to be a hero. You're not getting any buyers in there yet. It's looking more like a valuation trap right now, so I'm just holding off to the side. We'll reassess this on Monday morning after they report earnings, but it just looks ugly to me. I know Scott and I had commented a couple of times that we were not fans of the stock action that was going on, and sometimes you just got to throw in the towel and I know that you were wrong on an idea because the price action just continues to work against you, and this would certainly be one of those cases. But again, we'll reassess it Monday and talk to anybody that's got a position in there and try to help provide some direction. Next up, 10 Cent Music, TME. It's an interesting one. It's getting back over its 50-day moving average here. That would certainly be important for it to hold that, obviously, ahead of earnings. You got that 1350 level down below, and that if it could get through and move into 15, that would certainly point to some upside, but I'd be a little cautious on this one into earnings. Spotify's results are decent, but nothing to really get overly excited about. So I'm just be curious to see what kind of numbers they post to see the health of the Chinese consumer, really more than anything. Next up, moving on to Tuesday morning, Advanced Auto Parts, AAP, similar to all the auto part stocks. This is looking pretty ugly here. I'd have this one on your short radar. We talked about LEA a couple of days, or yesterday, Jim and I did, in our piece, and starting to see that one break down. We had noted that this was likely a short, and I think AAP kind of falls into that same category where it just continues to get weighted on or have weight dumped on it, and it's just looking heavy right here. So I would not be a fan of that. It would be, if anything, looking to play it to the downside. This will be out Tuesday morning. We also have Brinker out as well. Not performing as well as some of the other restaurants, that's for sure. That would have me raising a bit of a red flag here. Just wanted to take a quick look at one thing. 36 million float, 36% short interest. Certainly diversifying from the rest of the restaurant place that we've seen here, despite a strong consumer. This, of course, has Chili's, Bar and Grill, and Maggiano's are the key stores for Brinker Eat, but it's an ugly looking chart. But given the consumer strength and given the short interest, I'd have a little bit of an interest in this one, maybe breaking out and squeezing up to that 200-day moving average in reaction. So I'm going to keep this one on the long radar here. Next up, I want to take a look at IIVI. So 59 million float, 15% short interest. This is, of course, one of those optoelectronic component device plays here. Trying to get above its 200-day moving average, right at that 37 area here. It's been in a pretty tight range the last 3-4 weeks, between that 36 to 41 level, and that's what we're going to want to keep an eye out on. Obviously wants to hold that, and any push higher. 41 is going to be stern resistance, but also perhaps set this up for a possible breakout. Next up, we want to look at JD.com. We're going to take a look at a couple of China plays here. All right, looking at JD, as per most of the Chinese names, this one is acting heavy right now. It's trying to test its 200-day moving average. So that's going to be the area we're looking for. Pretty low expectations, obviously, around these China plays. And the other two are going to be, of course, YY, which stock continues to get weight on here, as well as Huya. Forget the relationship there. I forget if it's YY owns Huya, I believe, and spun them out. But regardless of whichever one you're looking at some rough performances in the Chinese names. But again, that's why I wanted to highlight why the China economic data and these earnings are going to be so important because there's just such negativity around what's going on right there that we see a surprise to the upside. These could really get moving here. Huya, of course, or YY, I should say, is in a little bit of no man's land. Huya, for its part, um, needs to hold this 20 psych level here, but name that, I'm going to really be focusing in on these Chinese plays next week, as there's going to be a lot of activity going on there in that area. And then we've got Tilray, of course, which has really just been floating along above the 40 level here um, over the last 3 months, but had some decent performances from Crone, CRON, and APHA. So, Aurora Cannabis' guidance probably left a little bit to be desired, but was decent enough. So, be curious to see how people are ready to treat Tilray here. Next up, Canadian jacket maker Canada Goose, GOOS. Curious to see how the relationship with China is impacting results here, but um, charts recovered from that dip down at 32 area. If I recall, I think Damon had played along in it on that dip. I don't know if he's still involved, but no, he's not. But this thing's had a really nice bounce. It's filled up that gap from the gap down, so a little bit of a tougher call right now, but certainly an earnings play that will be in focus and could see um, some volatility. Next up, Lucan Coffee. I pointed this one out a few weeks ago around the 17-18 range, and it's really been popping up nicely down up to 25 here. Getting near, just hit a fresh IPO high a couple of sessions ago, and really getting some momentum behind it ahead of this earnings report. We'll see if it could keep it up through this earnings, but I'm going to be curious to see again another read on the Chinese consumer here, and one that we're going to want to be watching, and an interesting play for sure, as is our next name, Canopy Growth, another one of the marijuana plays. We talked about expectations are a little bit on the rise here, but certainly the stock price isn't, as this has just been sitting around that 32 level. Want to keep an eye on that, make sure it holds. Otherwise, the December low around that 25.50 area is definitely going to be coming into play, but just downward momentum going on in a lot of these marijuana plays at the moment. Then that evening, we got a couple of interesting tech names on the telecom side with Cisco, CSCO, which has really rolled over as of late and is fighting to hold that 51 level here. There we go. And that also stands as the 50 psych, so some pretty staunch support here for Cisco, which has been posting pretty steadily strong earnings over the last couple of quarters. So might see this one bid up going into that earnings and make a little bit of a run at 55 levels. So I'd have this on the swing along ahead of earnings, but wouldn't want to hold it through because I think there will be some higher expectations, and if it did happen to break down, you'd probably be looking at an aggressive move lower. And then we've got NTAP, NTAP. Hold on, sorry. All right, let me do a quick recap on NTAP. I think NTAP pre-announced, and that's what that gap down is. Let me double check that. Yeah, so they already recorded preliminary Q1 results. We could take a look at the chart and take a guess which direction that went. Not in their favor, obviously. Lowered their guidance here. Also guided full year revs below consensus. So stock got hit pretty good. So that should be priced in. We'll see if it can't recover on earnings. Obviously, its outlook's going to be closely monitored there, but probably taking some of the excitement out of NTAP. But here's an exciting one going on Thursday morning. Alibaba, BABA. It's a name that I'm really curious at down at these levels here. I just think it's one of the better plays out there, but the chart looks pretty ugly, as do most of these Chinese names again. But that's why this next week is so important, because we're just keeping an eye out, seeing if we can get any turnaround. Alibaba, of course, will give us a read on the Chinese consumer, and going to be one that we're going to want to be paying attention to. Canadian Solar is another name, holding up pretty well compared to the rest of the Chinese plays. Solar in general has been doing pretty solid, as we know. So looking for a decent report and any sort of commentary on the environment in China would be of interest. All right, here's one. We're going to have to start talking to Damon about the distressed opportunities in this one, because it's certainly looking a little peaked right now. I thought it might have even fallen off of our list, and I know that they got a warning, but J.C. Penney, 60 cents. So what do you think, D? We're going to take a look at the distressed here on this side? They've been staying away from J.C. Penney. So, but it should be a fun one to watch, and my advice, there's no need to be a hero and own this one. So that's we'll just see if how long it'll stay on the coverage universe in our for our team, as that's usually under the one is where we cut bait on it. Next up, we got Tapestry, which is of course formerly Coach. Looking pretty ugly here. It's just testing around those lows of 28. I'm gonna have to take a look at this one, but I mean, you got to figure the yuan devaluation's not going to help the Chinese business here. So, there's going to be some cautious people ahead of this. Luxury retail, as we can see, has not been performing well. I'm not looking to pick this up on the cheap here. It's trading about 9.9 times forward PE. I'd need to see a good quarter before I felt like I needed to get involved, maybe even a move back above that 30 level. But Tapestry, definitely looking ugly right here. Walmart, WMT, of course. We want to see if the consumer continues to perform, and this is going to be the one that we're going to want to watch here for probably the best proxy on the consumer that we could find. Stock's been holding in pretty nicely. It has pulled back about $10 here. Why is that? And that's obviously the latest round of tariffs and the impact that they're going to have. So we want to watch commentary to see what they have to provide to us in terms of what to expect and how that might impact forward-looking guidance. We got Applied Materials is out next week, AMAT. This is a nice looking chart here. It's just been steadily on the rise as it broke above its bounced off its 200 day back at the end of May, and it's really just been moving higher here. It got up to 52 before reversing to 45 on the tariff concerns, but it has since bounced back about 2 points. Look for solid support in this 45 area for AMAT, and like this one to the upside. And one of the big names for next week is up next, NVIDIA, NVDA. This is, of course, the chip play that chart's looking a little concerning here, as it's down below its 50-day moving average. Don't like this one going into earnings. Perhaps a breakdown would entice me a little bit more to jump in, get in around that 135 level. Definitely diverging a lot from AMD. I've got a quick thing that I want to see here. So NVIDIA is trading about 22 times forward PE and 9 times price to sales. AMD is trading about 32 times PE and 6 times price to sales. So a little bit of a mixed reading, I suppose, there on the valuation front, but definitely not the frothy valuation for that NVIDIA enjoyed for a while there. And then the last two names we're going to be discussing, PAGS, which is, of course, PagSeguro, that Brazilian fintech play we've been talking about. I don't know. I know Scott likes this name a lot, but this is looking a little shaky to me in front of earnings. They're going to really have to impress, I think, in order to avoid some selling. And then finally, the last one we are going to discuss is John Deere and Company, which is making a nice bounce back and coming into its 200-day moving average. I get the feeling that a lot of the price action for Deere could be broken out with the Chinese and U.S. reaction in the markets here, perhaps some trade war headlines. So don't know what to expect from earnings, but obviously straddling that 200-day moving average and really needs to move back above, otherwise it could get leaned on a little bit here. I might actually think about leaning onto it into earnings, but not in a rush to jump in and play that right now here on a Friday afternoon. So it's going to be one that's going to be on the radar. And that's what we're looking at on the earnings front. Someone asking to take a look at OSS. Don't know them. One Stop Systems. Let's see what they do. OSS. I'll pull that up. I mean, it looks like it's trying to put in a bottom here. I think the person's telling me that they had earnings, so I apologize. Let me see if we covered them. I'm not seeing anything. I'll have to scroll back around. I thought the person was seeing it. Yeah, they did report results. Revenue up 153% to 14.9 million. That's always nice. Seeing a good reaction in the name. What do they do? Design, manufacture, and market industrial-grade computer systems and components that are based on industry-stated computer architectures worldwide. Interesting area. Offers GPU appliances, which are high-density and fully integrated computer clusters. That's an interesting business. I'll have to take a closer look at this one. I really don't know it, to be honest, so apologies to the user. But gotta like that bounce off the lows there, that 160 ripping up to 2 here, testing its 100-day moving average. And also looks like it had that's a key high from early in July, so got to get through there, but I'll scoop back around, see if I can't find anything of interest in OSS. Thank you to the sub for pointing that out, and the earnings there as well. So that's going to do it on my end here. We've got 25 minutes left. I'll be around keeping an eye on markets, making sure we don't fall apart at all or anything into the close. And as per usual, if anybody's got any questions on anything, please let us know. We'll talk to you soon, and everybody have a great weekend.